the Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Primitive Patterns Podcast. Today we got Colsey on the pod.
What's up, boys?
We're going to talk a little bit about...
Colsey's back, baby.
Colsey's back in black.
Pod.
We're gonna
Excited to be here.
Talk a little bit about the Grand Canyon that we just did. We did it last year as well, but before we get into that, how are the boys doing today?
Doing great, buddy. Feeling good. Actually, that run we went on felt like shit, but other than that, feeling great.
The workout this morning was unreal, though.
Oh, yeah.
Good vibes.
Yeah,
Great
it's,
vibes.
started Saturday morning community workouts back up. It's also like 22 degrees in sun, and the day of recording this is like October 20th or something like that. So it's a good day.
Good day.
Well, yeah, a little bit of a backstory here. We went and did the Grand Canyon last year. We did the rim to rim. We went back this year with the hopes of breaking our time from last year, but also recording the whole process and putting out like a vlog style video for you guys. That'll be out November 1st. You guys can check that out for sure. But yeah, maybe if we just want to start with like, I don't know, what was maybe something different about the experience this year?
Well, it was hot as fuck because when we went last year, it was like November. It was mid-November, and as you boys know, and this year we went, it was like roughly beginning of October.
Yeah.
So like first week or two of October, and that month and a half in Arizona makes quite the difference in terms of temperature. So last year, I want to say it was like maybe mid 80s or something like that was the peak heat, and this year it was like low hundreds, like 102, 103. Luckily enough, because we started at sunrise, when you go through the canyon, it actually takes way longer than we were expecting for the sun to like crest over the canyon. So our total time was like 6.5 hours. Probably for 4.5 of those, we were in the shade anyway. But then it's like the last 2, you're getting tired, you're climbing out. Now the sun peaks out on that south rim. So that was definitely different. I was feeling it by the end. I think there's multiple factors that played into that. The sun definitely being one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, any stretch, especially near the end where you were stuck in the direct sun was really, I found challenging.
Yeah.
Just because we're not used to that like dry heat here in Ontario.
Yeah, no. Luckily that south rim though was like a horseshoe shape. So, and it was switchback. So it would be like on the way out, you'd be in the shade and then you'd get to the other side and then you're in the sun.
Yeah.
And then you're back into the shade. If it weren't for that, dude, the way out would have been fucking brutal.
Yeah.
It already was pretty brutal. Like, what do you guys think about how did it go this year compared to last year with like maybe the expectations that you put on it? Like, did you find that it was going to be easy? Like before going, did you think, oh, it's going to be easier this year because we did it last year and we're more prepared? And then what was the reality of it when you were in there? Was it actually easier than like the year before? I know for me, it wasn't really, but like, what do you boys
Yeah,
think?
like I don't know. It wasn't easier because we also took close to 30 minutes off of our total time, which over 6.5 hours, like that's a pretty high percentage. Like 30 or like 25 minutes, whatever it was, doesn't sound like that much, but it was only over like a 6-hour span. So it actually is a substantial amount of time off. So we went a little faster. Last year I felt amazing. Like you boys know, like I was kind of leading the pack at the end, like, and usually that doesn't happen. Usually I'm the guy that's like my fucking knee or like I'm in some serious pain. And for whatever reason, last year that wasn't the case. And we got to that point this year where we were like 4 miles out. And I think we were like 3 miles out, and I made that comment and I was kind of trying to get a reaction out of the boys, but I was also kind of being serious. And I was like, I think I have the Canyon's number. And that came back to bite me in the ass a little bit. Can't be saying stuff like that in the Canyon, but I genuinely felt like last year I felt incredible the whole time. This year, up until that like 3 mile mark left, I felt pretty good. And then, you know what got me was we took a Bright Future, if you want to call it like a microdose, about halfway through the canyon. We took 300 milligrams each of psilocybin, right? And that just completely stunted my appetite. So like the positives out of that, like we were flowing, like when we were running or whatever, like I felt very much in a flow state, but I also just didn't want any food at all. Anybody that's kind of like dabbled with mushrooms or microdosing knows that it completely stunts your appetite.
One thing I'll say
Yeah.
though, because it does help so much with just getting you in a good flow state. For me, it does. Like I lose track of time, big time. You just have to know, okay, it's gonna stunt my appetite, and I gotta keep eating because I know I need fuel. I'm just not hungry.
I was naive to that though, because I remember being like, I'm not hungry, but fuck it. Like as long as I keep the electrolytes going. And at one point with like maybe a mile or two left on that south rim, because Coles, you dropped back with our one buddy like a couple minutes behind, and then me, Jake, and Luke were together. And so you guys would know, like I was hurting at one point. I thought I was gonna like puke or pass out. And then I started jamming those like that's it fruit bars into my lip and pretty well just like chipmunking them. And I started to feel better as I got the sugar into me. So I think the microdose just completely stunted my appetite. I stopped eating, and then down the line, that definitely didn't help me out. Another thing I'll say too is there's that last water station fill up, and it tells you that you're 4 miles out. And when you see that sign, you're like, oh fuck, 4 miles, we're there, boy. Like you almost feel like you're there.
Yeah.
But earlier this summer, we were in Yosemite National Park, and there's the 4 mile trail. And that pretty well takes you right up a mountainside to the top. And when you think about how long that hike is, when you see that 4 mile sign, you can't let that fool you, because that's really where the battle begins.
Yeah, because that's the hardest stretch of the whole canyon. It's like, yeah, it's 4 miles, which is like whatever, 6.5 K or something like that. But it's all uphill and the hottest point of the day. So yeah, there's a lot of factors playing it, but I do remember getting to that water station being like, oh, there's 4 miles left, boys. Like
Yeah.
spirits were light, and like 30 minutes after it was like, okay, we're in one.
Yeah, that stretch can be challenging near the end, because that's also right where that sun spot was. Like a decent amount of sun right after that water break.
Fuck yeah.
But heading into this canyon, like I felt pretty confident. Like last year, I was definitely more nervous going into it.
Oh yeah.
But this year, just because maybe it's like we did it already and it wasn't as novel, it felt like we were like on a mission to get through it. And it was hard. I didn't feel like we ever really like, or personally, like I didn't mentally like settle in at all. Whereas last year was almost like it was just so new and novel. It was like, wow, this is so nuts to be running through here. Like I've never done something like this. And then this year was like, I felt very like we were rushed to get it, and we were like chasing the clock, which wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
That was just the biggest difference I felt between like last year's rim to rim and like this year.
And because last year, like we had never done it, so we, like, as much as we were very confident that we were going to get through it, like we knew we were going to get through it, but in the same breath, we were all like, fuck, how hard is this going to be to get through it? Like we've never done it. We've never been in the thing. So this year we knew like, all right, that's no longer in the question. Now the question is like, how are we going to feel? Are we going to be able to go? Are we able to going to beat our time? Which again, we kept saying throughout it as well, especially near the end, once we started to like really battle in terms of not feeling the best. We were like, fuck it, man. It doesn't even matter. Like if you're somebody that commits yourself to training for something like that, and you get from that north rim to the south rim, I don't care how long it takes you, like big ups to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, big time. And also like going into this year, we were all kind of expecting, well, I know Luke before we went was like, oh, I think we were in better running shape last year because we had just ran the marathon. But then us three were like, no, there's no way. Like we've been doing way more hiking, plus just like the accumulation of 2 years total of training, whereas last year was our first year. I do remember at one point though, because you are right, getting through it is just like the main thing. But getting out of the South Rim, and I was like, fuck, we're only going to be 20 minutes faster. I honestly thought we were going to be faster than that.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to break it by more.
Yeah.
Not that it's upsetting at all, but I just kind of figured we would be.
It's hard to make up ground though. Like we did it on the ground, like on the flat ground. Like our splits, like jogging, were a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And maybe even a bit more like efficient on the down at the North Rim. But we don't, as much as we train, and we don't really get that level of like technical downhill running.
No.
Because it's a consistent like 5 to 7 kilometers of like not just downhill running, but also going over like 6 to 12 inch drops, like landing, keep going, like foot placements. That stuff's not like your typical day. And sure, we have the escarpment here, but there's no like rocky terrain with like uneven surfaces. So the amount of energy it takes just to think through that efficiently and not roll an ankle and eat shit.
Huge amount of energy.
Huge amount of energy. So you're not really gonna make up ground there, or even hiking. Like, sure, you can hike as hard as you want, but unless you're gonna start into a jog, you're not really like beating your splits. I find, especially with a terrain like that.
Yeah, I would say another, like, we definitely made up a bit of ground on the way up too, just because if we took less breaks.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like last year, we took way more breaks.
You want to know why we made up a lot of ground on the way up? Because all day we never got past once. Like, we were always passing people, but we never got past. And we're at the South Rim. We just crossed over the bridge at the Colorado River. And we're like, all right, like, now it's starting to go up. So it was pretty well like agreed upon by the boys that we weren't going to run anymore. We were going to hike it. And all of a sudden, this group of like 5 or 6, like 15 to 17-year-old girls just blows by us. And then blows by us. And I was like to Luke, I was like, hey, I think that's our cue to start running a little bit here, boys. And we tried to keep up with them. We kind of did for a bit, but they were savages and they were gone. We saw them at the last water fill-up station. So they must have already been there for 5 minutes because they were kind of packing up right once we got there. And that was pretty well the last we saw of them.
Honestly, that was best case because I remember I was leading at that moment. We kind of got stuck behind like a group of walkers, and it's hard to pass people like hiking because you're not, unless you really like jog by them. And I was in my head, I'm like, oh, I should pass. But you're always trying to be like, we're Canadian. We're always too nice. Like, just like, get the fuck out. But you're like, sorry, coming up on your left. And then as I'm thinking it, I'm like, okay, I should just go. And then the group of girls goes right by. And I was like, this is perfect. I was like, lead the way.
Yeah.
And then like you said, they were gone in no time, out of sight pretty soon. Yeah.
I remember Luke had a crazy play on the way down. We were going down the North Rim, and there's this older couple. And he's like, yep, coming up behind you. And he takes the inside lane. and this older couple is just like, they're fucking not obviously right on the edge, but like, they're like getting out of his way, moving closer to the edge. And I was like, as we went by them, I was like, Luker, you gotta pass on the outside.
Yeah.
If you're gonna pass, you gotta take the outside lane.
Yeah.
You gotta let the hiker
Give him a little adrenaline rush.
Yeah, honestly.
As little as that seems, like stuff like that where you're like stuck mentally, like, oh, I'm trying to pass, like that can add up.
Oh yeah,
time pretty quick.
Also, that is actually true. It was so much busier this year. We had to pass way more people on the way down, which definitely slows you down a lot because, like what I was just saying with like Luke and passing those hikers, but it can be a little bit sketchy at points where like when you pass people, you have to slow down, you have to move slower, you have to make sure that they are tight to the wall so they feel comfortable. So that was also definitely something that would have slowed us down too.
That's the moment you always roll an ankle too. You're like looking at the person, you're not looking at your feet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I rolled my ankle twice. You rolled your ankle once.
Yeah.
And it's always when you have to look up because like you're passing somebody. It's always when it happens. That was crazy though, like strolling up to the North Rim at like 5 a.m. or whatever it was. And when we went last year, we got to the parking lot and nobody was there. Because once you start to hit November at the North Rim, the road leading up to the North Rim closes when the first big snowfall hits. And that can happen like mid-November. So like tourist season is, throughout the summer all the way up until whatever, maybe like mid to late October. And then it really slows down. And we knew that, but we didn't think it was going to be that drastic. Like there was not a single parking spot in the lot, and it's a big lot. So yeah, there was a bunch of people, and there was a bunch of people going rim to rim too.
Yeah.
Which I was I shouldn't say surprised, but like last year we thought we were like G.I. Joe because we're going rim to rim. And you show up this year and there's like groups of people doing it. So that is the other thing too. It's hard as fuck, but it is attainable.
100%.
Like, and it's such a cool experience that I think if you're already somebody that's into endurance like events, or even if not, like you just really love hiking and you also love experiencing adventure, it's definitely, you got to put the hours into training, but it's not some unattainable goal that's only able to be achieved by like ultra marathon runners or something like that. Like it's
Even
40K.
if you just want to go hike the thing. Like
Yeah, exactly.
If you're just an active person that gets out and hikes every week and you just do other things, you could get through that canyon in 12, 14 hours. Like,
Yeah. It's going to be hard. Getting out is hard no matter what. Like it's going to be a battle, but it is only 40 kilometers. It's not like it's 80K.
yeah.
Like 40 kilometers. Most people, if they train for 3 to 6 months, can run a half marathon pretty easily. Like if you already have a certain baseline level of health and fitness. So if you're
It would be a pretty cool if you're somebody that say isn't into running or hiking, but maybe you want to get into it, or you've always said you wanted to run a marathon or whatever. I think that is kind of like the perfect event to motivate you to start, because it's still a distance where it's attainable, but it's the Grand fucking Canyon. Most people, when you're, have you seen the Grand Canyon before? They're like, yeah, I was standing up at the South Rim looking out. It was fucking awesome. Not many people get to experience the feeling of that thing when you're at the bottom of it and you see the whole thing and you go across. So like just the motivation to be like, it was like when we stopped at Jacobs Lake, this place just outside the North Rim, one of the workers there was like, oh, you guys did rim to rim? We're like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, I did it a couple years ago. He's like, that's something you'll be able to fucking brag about for the rest of your life. And that's obviously not how we are, like bragging about, oh, we did this, whatever. But it's just that like, it's such a cool fucking thing to do. And that if you really want to get into endurance and long runs and hikes, it's just, I think, such a motivating factor. And we were talking about it today on our run. We were like, it's hard to get out here and hike the mountain and run when you're not training towards something. So I think giving yourself an objective and something to train towards is so important if you want to get into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably nothing better than the rim to rim.
Yeah, and if you live in North America, you're lucky that it's accessible.
Yeah.
Like you take, no matter where you are, it's no further than a 5 to 7 hour plane ride to get there, and you can do one of the coolest things in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so enjoyable to see, and
Yeah.
it's going to be way more enjoyable than training for like the Toronto waterfront marathon.
Oh yeah. And even just the training itself, like
forces you to get it into nature, because you can't just
Yeah.
run on the road to prepare for the canyon.
Yeah, like
you got to get out in the trails. You got to get out in the forest. Like,
and especially if you live in the Collingwood area, now you have like the most ideal training grounds out of anybody in Ontario, most likely. So, but yeah, the training itself is so much better. Like when we were training for the half marathon or the marathon last summer, just the amount of like road running or like the Georgian Trail, which is, if you're not from Collingwood, it's just this like flat gravel trail, no hills, nothing, just flat for like 40 kilometers. And we just abused that thing. Whereas when we were training for the canyon, it was like running across the escarpment, up and down.
different trails. Yeah.
Yeah, different trails, different hikes. The training itself is awesome.
Yeah.
And also try to like lure some of your friends into doing it with you.
Yeah.
Realistically, you probably don't want to try to go rim to rim by yourself.
No.
Not that you couldn't, but like you probably don't want to. So try
Definitely
to.
a smart idea to not do it by yourself for the first time. And then, yeah, like you said, I'm sure it probably wouldn't be too difficult to get a couple people to be, like at least have the ambition or want to do it with you. And then having training partners, we talk about that all the time. Like being able to go out on a Saturday morning with a couple of buddies and just shoot the shit, have a good time, get a good sweat going. That makes the training so much more enjoyable. So it just gives back to your energy in your life tenfold by trying to take on something like that.
What do we think? What do we think for next year? Because we were talking about like that. There's people that go rim to rim and then back.
Rim to rim. Yeah.
I don't know, like that might be a goal down the road. That would be something that I'd be like, okay, you really got to dial into your training. Like you can go rim to rim and casually train hard throughout the summer and then be able to go do it, and you're probably all good. But to go there and back would be fucked
I couldn't imagine right now getting out of the South End and then being like, all right, we're going back.
I would love to do it though, because the training for it would be so fun. Like for where we live, you would end up like going up north and doing like a 40-50K thing up there. And
Yeah.
I would also love to attempt it eventually, but we were saying even this past year, maybe like next year, a good like stepping stone would be send the one way again, sleep on it, wake up, and then go through again, just walking or jogging. Because we took that shuttle, which was the worst part of the weekend. To wake up, we all felt pretty good, like a little stiffness, whatever.
I could have hiked it off.
Then to sit in that shuttle and go around the canyon, which
5
basically
hours.
takes the same amount of time to go through it on your feet.
Yeah.
That'd be a good hybrid, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that because we were standing there with our coffee in the morning, looking out at the canyon, and we were like, "Fuck! I kind of wish we were just like going through this thing instead of having to sit in a car for 5 hours."
Yeah, and not trying to gun it. Like if
No.
we did it in 6.5 hours, day 2 you could do it in 8.5, 9 hours.
And
Take a
instead
bit
of
more
300
time.
milligrams of psilocybin, you up it to 600 milligrams.
Yeah. There's a couple beaches down there too. You could have a day.
Oh yeah. And you can't put into words what it's like to go through it because
Yeah.
you start in this vast scenario and then you get to the narrowest point where it's like a trail in a creek
Yeah.
and then it just opens right back up.
Yeah, there's a section in the can. So at times when you're in it, it's like multiple kilometers in terms of the width from side to side. But then as you get closer to the south side, there's a place called Phantom Ranch, which is right before the Colorado River. And then you go up before Phantom Ranch, there's a section called the Box. And the Box is like the canyon literally narrows in to like
You could throw a baseball and
less than 50 yards, like 50,
yeah.
Yeah.
40 yards. Like
Not
it narrows right in. I remember looking at it from wall to wall and being like, yeah, that's probably like the width of our parking lot at the gym.
Yeah.
Like something like that. Like it narrows right in, which is also a crazy thing to see.
Yeah.
I actually wrote in my journal when we were home, and I was like, the thing that I wrote said, "There's very few moments in life that I feel eternity, and the canyon's one place where I feel it. It's like past, present, future, or just all in. It's all right there. Like
Yeah.
you're not. There's a point at that canyon that I feel like I can't even say I remember because I wasn't thinking, but I was just like so fucking in the moment
Yeah.
that you just feel time is like non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very few times in life I feel you get to actually feel that.
Which is also why going through the canyon probably isn't as hard as people think, because when you get there, the crazy thing is when you drive up to the North Rim, you would expect to be like, oh, there's the Grand Canyon on the drive up, but you don't see it at any point. You park in the fucking parking lot, you still don't see it. And then you like get onto the trailhead and you have to go 50 yards down the trailhead, and then it's like, boom, it opens up right in front of you. Forget where I was going with that, but
I feel like you're like the energy you get from
oh, right. That's what I was about to say. Like you're so jacked up, like you're so jazzed to be there that yeah, the way down is like technical and somewhat difficult and whatever, but like just that energy of the canyon carries you through the majority of it.
Fuck yeah.
You know, maybe once you get to the South Rim and you've been hiking for a couple miles, you're like, get me out of this fucking thing. I don't care anymore. But like for the majority of it, you're just amped up, and that carries you like that literally gives you energy.
Yeah.
To get through it.
Especially your first time, your brain has nothing to like, it's like prediction error, because it can't, there's nothing it can compare it to. So the whole
No.
time you're just like, what the fuck?
Buddy, there's nothing like your first time.
It's true.
facts.
All right, boys, good podcast. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Next year, rim to rim to rim.
Is a possibility.
Potentially.
Is a possibility.
So maybe.
Investors could be you.
It could be you.
All right.
300 milligrams turns into 600 milligrams.
My
Hey.
600 turns into 12.
Yeah, Colesy was 600.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get into that another time.
Another
maybe,
time.
But
Good
All right,
stuff.
Yo,
boys.
guys.
Good epi.
peace.
The Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery.